For those of you that don't know, I am the resident Jew here at our center, and proudly. And I always love Hanukkah, and what's so trippy is Dr. Laura was actually supposed to do the talk today, and I was supposed to do the first Sunday of the month, but she had a conflict because it's one of her granddaughter's birthdays, so she couldn't be here today. So we swapped, and when I looked at the calendar and saw that tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, I was like, of course, this was divine intervention. I'm to be here speaking on the first night of Hanukkah. So what has become a tradition here on the first Mammoth to light the Hanukkah candles. And I'm going to be talking a lot about this idea of holiness and oneness as God and what this prayer actually can bring to life for all of us, rather than it being an experience of duality, how it can actually be an experience of oneness. Thinking about this talk and thinking about the differences between Hanukkah and Christmas and the imagery of both holidays, I really had quite a moment, because with Christmas, you've got like the angels, and you've got the Star of Bethlehem, you've got the Magi, you've just got all these really ethereal images and symbols. And with Hanukkah, you've got a military uprising, a war, destruction. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? You've got all this energy compared to this whole. So I had to look at them both and just say, well, it explains a lot for my people why we're like we are. But regardless of that, and I joke. Regardless of that, both holidays end in miracles, and both are about miracles. So before I get to that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of Hanukkah in case you don't know what it's about. So this is what it is, and I'm not doing the rap this year. Maybe next year we'll do the Hanukkah rap, but you can see it on YouTube. Anyway, so in biblical times, there was a lot of war and oppression happening in the state of Israel, and the Jewish people were kicked out of their temples and kind of set aside as the Syrian Greek military occupied their temple and all the land. And so they destroyed their temple. They put up their gods, because the Jews believed in one God only, and this group believed in many, many gods. So they totally desecrated the temple because they had all these different types of gods occupying the temple. Well, the Jewish people got annoyed with that. And after a while, they said, we have got to do something about that. But they really didn't have an organized military. But somebody knew of this little band of this little family that had some warriorness to them and had some arms and had some military ability. And it was the Maccabees. And so they went to the Maccabees and they said, you guys got to help us out here. We have got to get our temple back. We've got to restore this Jewish identity here. We're being killed here. We're losing our land. And so the Maccabees were a ragtag, very unique set of warriors. They weren't your average, what you see as organized military. They all just had their own thing going on, kind of like a rebellious thing. And so they said yes. They said, okay, we will go confront this army, see what we can do. And there weren't a lot of them. There were only a few of them compared to this massive organized army. But they went in there and they conquered them. And they got the temple back, which was absolutely destroyed. And so as they were occupying the temple, they were very concerned because they saw that there was only enough oil to burn for one night, and they needed 8 nights at least of oil to be able to do the work of restoring everything. And so they just did what they did. They lit the oil for the one night, and as sunset came the next day, the oil was still burning. And that kept going on and on for 8 days. And that's the miracle of Hanukkah. After all of that bloodshed, we get a beautiful miracle of light, the light of spirit burning when we thought it couldn't happen. And so my next slide is about miracles. And I have to share my experiences early as a practitioner in this philosophy. And for some reason, we were really discouraged about using the word miracles. They said, oh, you cannot use that word. There's no such thing as a miracle because we know everything is mind and everything is consciousness. So really, everything is just, there is no miraculous anything. It's just a matter of consciousness. And it really bothered me because I love the word miracle. How many of you love the word miracle? It just really sits well, right? I love it. And whenever I heard that whole, poo-poo about miracles, I just had a hard time with it because I knew my belief about miracles isn't that there's something outside of me that's creating something. It's about me and my belief system. Because when we believe that something cannot happen, that it's impossible, that the odds are against us, kind of like the Maccabees and the Jewish people, when we believe that that can't happen and then the good thing happens, we say, oh my God, it's a miracle. But it's really that our consciousness opened up to the possibility of something to happen that was not expected. So miracles really are about our consciousness and to open up to something that could possibly happen only if we entertained the thought. Does anybody here know the story of the 5-minute mile, how they broke the 5-minute mile? Okay, so in 1954, nobody could break the 5-minute mile. Like everybody who was into racing, they could only hit 5 minutes. But in 1954, Roger Bannister broke that. He ran the mile in less than 5 minutes. And wouldn't you know it, everybody started being able to do that as well. And it just goes to show it's consciousness, right? They thought it was a miracle that somebody finally did it, but it wasn't a miracle. Somebody believed they could, they did, and now everybody else saw the possibility, so they were able to do it as well. So this is the idea around miracles. And my question to you is to ask yourself, what am I really desiring a miracle to happen in my life? What miracle is it that I want to see happen in my life or the world? Because what I know in my heart, there's a lot of miracles I would like to see in this lifetime. I would love to see world peace. I would love to see all this climate stuff stop and our world coming back to a place where there's more balance. But I stand in the belief that it's possible. And the more of us that stand in the belief that it's possible, it's going to happen. Because that's how consciousness works, especially at the collective level. So what we might think can never happen, cures for diseases, changes in the environment, changes in the way we treat each other. If we're in a state where we say it would take a miracle for that to happen, just know that your consciousness opening up to that possibility brings the miracle in. So I wanted to just talk to you about that with miracles, because this is a season of miracles. The whole Christmas story is riddled with miracles. So I think it's important for us to see that we can make miracles happening in our lives when we realize a miracle is simply a shift in belief and opening up to possibility that we didn't think could happen. My next slide is this. So Ernest Holmes did say something about miracles in his Science of Mind textbook. He says this, and this is a two-parter. There is a place in the mentality, in the heights of its greatest realizations, where it throws itself with complete abandonment into the very center of the universe. I know that's a lot, right? It's a lot of words. But what this means, just want to kind of bring it into a place of reality where you can feel what this is about. So we all have these minds that have a lot of stuff in them, right? We've got a lot of minds. And our minds are very powerful. And when we use our minds to stop focusing on what's not working in our lives, when we stop focusing on what's not possible, and we drop into a different place, we drop into a place where we're not going to allow the belief systems of the world or our paradigms that aren't working for us, when we stop doing that and we drop into a place of spirituality. Because that's what we're here today to do, right? Drop into spirituality. We want to feel something that is beyond the world of appearances. We want to feel something that has an energy to it that is boundless. And I know for a lot of us, we ask ourselves, how do I get into that energy? I don't even know what you're talking about. But if you look at a sunrise, it's moving into this place, which we call it the universe. You could call it infinite love. But it's a place where we really set aside who we are in this identification as a human being who's been in place A, who's been married to that, who's done that, who's had a career there. We set all of this aside, and we find that energy inside of ourselves that we call, this is who we are, remembering who we are. And it's something that isn't in the mind. It is something that's in the heart. And when we calm the mind down and say, you are not in control right now, I am diving in deeper into that universal spaciousness, that place where there's so many possibilities for us. When we drop into that place, that's the miracle place. When we can stop, having to say, well, it's never happened or this can't be. That's the miracle place. We call it the quantum field. We call it God. We call it life. And the second half of this quote is this. It is here, that place. It is here that the mentality performs seeming miracles, because there is nothing to hinder the whole from coming through. And this is the big teach on this quote. And miracles, right? When we can open up, the mind can just open up and be still, like we talked at the song we did in the beginning. Be still and know that I am God. And just let that wholeness come through. We don't have to make that wholeness do what we want it to do. That's the beauty of this. We just have to be open to it, to feel it, and let it rise up within ourselves and make the way, make the journey, make the things happen, because we're resonating in love. The effort isn't ours to make it happen and to figure it out. The effort for us is to open our hearts and live in love. That's it. Isn't that easier than having to figure it out? Because the universe responds to us. It responds to us. That's what energy's all about. The law of attraction, right? Cause and effect. If you're causing love and peace and openness and expansiveness, you will receive that. That's how it works. So my talk title is this. I love to put it in the middle. My talk title is called Rise to the Occasion. Because there are a lot of occasions in life that plop into our lives. And we have the choice to either just get really upset and really discouraged, or we can rise to the occasion and meet it with our spiritual knowing, with our spiritual energy. The Maccabees did just that. They knew who they were. The Maccabees, I didn't really emphasize this, but part of their whole thing is that they are the people of God. That's what the Jewish say, the chosen people. And because they had that faith, even though they were so small, they had such strong faith that they knew that it was more than just their littleness, because they were bigger than that. They knew who they were. So they rose to the occasion of defeating that army, taking back the temple, and they did. Now this week, we always write a blog for you guys during the middle of the week that we send out to you. And I wrote about a personal rising to the occasion that happened to me in my life when I was in my first term of practitioner training. I loved practitioner training. It was so cool. I mean, you learn all of these wonderful, amazing tools about being able to stand in your truth and prayer and getting your consciousness in such a great place. And so here I am in prac training, and I'm just floating in it. I'm loving it. It's like, this is so for me to do. I just was in such a state of exaltation. But 6 weeks in, I got a call from my sister who told me that my dad was in some serious distress. And so he had a lung condition and was being hospitalized. And so everything dropped. I stayed in class, but my life changed on a dime. And so I had to go back and forth between LA and here to be helping with all of that. And as I entered into that situation, I didn't feel that I could rise to the occasion, because I'd never experienced anything like having a father in that situation. I have never had to walk someone through that. And it was very challenging for me. And I thought I could either rise to the occasion or be a useless mess. That was another possibility I could have done. But I had just learned so much good stuff in my practitioner training. I thought, I'm going to rise to the occasion. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I have no instruction manual, but I'm going to rise up, and I'm going to be with my dad. And the interesting thing is this happened during Hanukkah 16 years ago. This experience. So it was practitioner training and Hanukkah and all this stuff at the same time. And I really chose to rise up. And it wasn't that I didn't have my feelings about it. I did. It was very upsetting. But I knew it was important for me to hold a higher consciousness for the family and for my dad. I knew it was important for me as I sat by his bedside to be there, to be loved, to hear what he had to say, to even give him a little spiritual truth along the way. And he took it, as much as he could. But we had great conversations because I was able to rise to the occasion. And what's so very interesting is, as I was doing this journey back and forth, and our practitioner term had finished, I drove straight to LA, and my dad made his transition 3 days later, which was so fascinating to me. Yeah, I thought, well, that's divine timing. And the whole experience was a demonstration of what we teach here, a total demonstration. And so I was able to be there for Dad, have some great conversations, and my sister and I used to share shifts, going back and forth with sitting with him in the hospital. And on that last day, she was driving back, and I was driving to see him. And he had made his transition during that time, and we knew Dad didn't want to do it with us there, and we honored that. It was like, of course. So I walk into the hospital, and I'm getting ready to go in his room, and the nurse stops me, and she's very distraught, and she goes, "Your dad passed." And I wasn't sad. I just said I was so grateful because he was in so much pain, and I knew it was time. And I was the one comforting her, which is fine. And that's how that goes. And I went and I just sat with my dad because, you have to wait for the whole mortuary thing, and that was a whole other thing. But I was able to really be there for him, and it felt really good to rise to the occasion. And I saw the good that came into my heart to rise to the occasion, knowing who I am and knowing about the spiritual energy that's behind every situation in life, because I think my ability to hold that space allowed for a more peaceful unfolding to happen. So I wanted to just tell you about that story because it's meaningful to me, and I think it's just a teaching opportunity for all of us to see how we can rise up. And so my next slide is this. I took a couple sentences from that great song that Alicia, wasn't that great and powerful? Oh my God, she's so great. So I chose that song because it's really all about rising out of these old paradigms that keep us out of our spiritual wholeness and rising up to the divine. So she said, rise out of the old paradigm and rise into the presence of the divine. And one of the great teaching lessons of the Hanukkah story is the whole temple of it all, because it's symbolic, it's a metaphor of ourselves. So the temple, as it was occupied by the foreign people, they had these false idols that I spoke of. And the false idols represent these old paradigms, these paradigms that are idols to us of, I am not enough, I can't do that. These good things don't happen to me, I'm stuck. All this stuff, those are old paradigms. But when we open ourselves up and remember who we are, that we are this divine energy that is expansive and whole, when we rise into that, everything shifts and changes. So it's about changing out the idols that are in our temples. Get rid of the old idols, the old paradigms, and bring that divine essence into your life. This is what Christmas and Hanukkah are all about. There's so much light because it's reminding us that there's light within us, and we ignore it. And we got to stoke that light up and live into it so we can see where we're going and we can see the power that we have to navigate through life experiences. That's really what it's all about. And it's really interesting that, it is said that wasn't when Jesus was born, that this is just the Christmas holiday was something that was constructed because of the old, solstice, that it was kind of a conglomeration of solstice and whatnot. But it's interesting to me because it really is about darkness moving into light, right? Darkness moving into light. And so as we're walking in our journeys through life, we have our occasions. It's so important to us and I know we feel the dark, I get it, I feel it too sometimes, but I remember the Hanukkah light. I remember the light that is the light of Jesus. I remember that I don't have to live in darkness because there's light everywhere. And when we remember that, things change. And my next slide is this. It's all about, underneath it all, it's the rise of the authentic self as well. Because we talk about all of us being these unique expressions of spirit. Everybody is so different. We have a lot of that here. We attract different people who don't want to conform, who don't want to be like everybody else. And this time of year, to me, and this whole idea of Hanukkah is about the authentic self rising up and doing what it is here to do and not be afraid and not be oppressed and not feel threatened. Because the authentic self is who you are. And it is mandatory. I'm going to say it. It is mandatory that you be who you are. and not to smite your light, to be who you are, because you're here to bring a different point of view, a different energy into this world. Because we're not all supposed to be rigid and the same. We're here to bring it together as all these different identities and visions and viewpoints. So it allows our world to be really creative, because creativity is everything. And when we let that creativity, that authentic in and rise up, we're living in that truth. And so this holiday, too, is about allowing the authentic, the inner Maccabee that we all are, letting that Maccabee that is, no, it is not as big as that army, but man, it's powerful because it's charged with God energy and it's who we are. So that's another really important thing for us to remember at this holiday season. And my next slide is this. Oh, I love this. So I don't know if you know this, but Hanukkah means to rededicate. And it's all about the rededication of the temple. That's what the bottom line of the story is. Because the temple was the sacred space for the Jewish people. It still is, obviously. It's the sacred space. This is where we feel our oneness with God. It's holy of holy. It is everything, everything. And so this holiday is really bringing to light the necessity for us to rededicate our temple. You know, and I see all of us here today, and I hear about people really wanting spirituality in their life again. And to me, it's like it's time for us to put our spirituality front and center in our lives, because that's where the answers are. That's where the growth is. So if we rededicate our temples of who we are and get rid of those false idols where we're thinking that we can't, like I talked about earlier, get rid of those and make yourself, your God, whatever that God is to you, that light, make that at the center of your temple. That's what it's all about, that holiness. The prayer that I did over the candles, and I was telling you about, that God makes us holy by giving us these commandments, by commanding us to light these candles. And I know it's archaic sounding, right? It sounds dualistic. But these religions that come into our lives, that some of us have experienced, some of us hear about it, beneath all of the dogma, there's truth, like Ernest Holmes told us. And when we talk about God makes us holy by commanding us to light candles, it's really just awakening to our divine nature. That's what makes us holy, awakening to our divine nature. Because when we awaken to that and live from that, our life is way more powerful and way different. So these holidays are empowering to us. They're reminding us of what we can do and what we've been ignoring about ourselves, that we haven't been seeing ourselves as this beautiful spiritual energy. We haven't been looking at our life situations and bringing in God or spirit or another possibility, creative potential. We haven't been looking in a broader way. We've been little. We've been constricted. And there's so much more for us when we open up our spirit and rededicate ourselves to putting our spirituality first and letting it lead us, letting it stretch us, letting us expand us. And there isn't one way to do that. It is your way. It is your way. And so my last slide is back to my talk again, rising to the occasion. These stories that we hear, Christmas, Hanukkah, they're the stories of us. They're the stories of consciousness. And these stories were written in a way so that people could understand them as a story, as a parable. But really, it's about you and me. It's about you and me rising up to meet life, rising up to the occasions that happen from a different perspective, from opening up the heart to feeling that life force that we are and letting it guide us through all the various occasions that happen in life, and be strong, be powerful, be all that we can be by knowing who we are. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.